Welcome into the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiegue, bringing you guys four more topics to talk about on today's episode in regards to more Cowboys news and just storylines around the NFL. The first one I'll get into will be around the new Chargers defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter, and what his strategy is to unlocking the full potential of that Chargers defense. Later on, I'll talk about the Stefon Diggs trade rumors and Bills GM coming out and sort of debunking those, wiping those away and saying why they wouldn't trade him, and I'll give you some reasons why they might want to trade him. Later on in the show, I'll recap everything that went down on the franchise tag deadline yesterday. There was a lot of players tagged, a lot of surprising players that weren't tagged, and some re-signs and other players that are going to hit the market and their potential impact. Before I wrap it all up with the story on the Cowboys again, this time Dak Prescott finally speaking to the media and giving his answer on why he feels attacked in some way by the media on the criticism that his team is receiving. All that coming up on today's episode. Before I jump into the first segment, I want to remind you guys to please use the tip and donations link with any questions that you may have during the show. The tip and donations link is running across the ticker down below me. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. And if you're only listening to this episode, the link again is GSMCPodcast.net. This makes sure I'm able to see your questions in the chat box right away and can read them on air. It's also a big help for the show and all the other shows across the networks for you guys to use the link and just engage with us. It makes it more fun, and we always appreciate it every time anyone's able to do that with any question or comment that you guys may have. But in saying that, I'm able to move into the chip shot story as always, kicking off the show. This time around the Los Angeles Chargers, they were also pretty active, one of the more active teams this offseason. They've made a lot of releases. Obviously, the big news is them bringing in Jim Harbaugh. But they also brought in Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator at Michigan with Harbaugh. He came over to the Chargers, and now he'll have the task of trying to unlock this Chargers defense that has very good players on it, but hasn't lived up to that reputation, that standard that having these sort of players comes with. He's basically, plain and simple, he's trying to use a system to get the best out of his star players, which is what every Chargers fan wants to hear. But in particular, Jesse Minter zoned in on Derwin James, wanted to get the best out of Derwin James. And he says he's looking forward to deploying Derwin James in that versatile role in various different systems, schemes that he has planned out to get the best out of Derwin James and for him to step more into that leadership, sort of Swiss Army knife, X-Factor defensive player that I'm sure everyone believes and knew that Derwin James could be coming out of Florida State. And just some comments that Jesse Minter made really to group this all in together into one thought is, he said, "I'm really, really excited about Derwin, and I've gotten a chance to get to know him a little bit. Just an unbelievable person, an unbelievable leader. The type of mindset that we want to have here on defense is really kind of how he plays already. I'm excited just to sort of try to unleash Derwin James." And, he went on to say he could do much more with him and the players around him. But he also made sure to preface it in saying that a lot of times coaches, when they have so many star players, maybe one in particular, they try to get them to do too much, overdoing their versatility and trying them in different roles where they might not excel or in different positions where they might not have played before. But because they're so good, so agile in skill set, they'll try him everywhere. And I think that's where he kind of toes the line, or he'll try to toe the line, I should say, in trying to unlock Derwin James, because Derwin James, coming out of Florida State, was a very highly touted safety, has great size to him, he has great ball skills, and he's coming off of a pretty down season for his standards, just based on what we've already seen from him, the kind of player that he can be in his first couple years. Last year, much like the rest of the Chargers, defensively, they weren't very good. They had a lot of big names, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Derwin James, Asante Samuel too, to some extent as well. And they just lacked any sort of big play, crucial third down stop, turnover on downs, whatever the scenario may be. They lacked those kind of moments in big games where you saw them lose a lot of those big games and maybe give up leads. Their offense wasn't able to stay on the field, and now their defense is tired and performing to less of what they're expected to. And all of that just wraps into a poor season. And Derwin James, being one of the more talented players, is going to be highlighted, especially after he was coming off back-to-back seasons of making the Pro Bowl. He just lacked that sort of spark. Really, that whole defense lacked that energy. And there could be some factors into that, not trusting in the offense, being too tired, just over and over of seeing your defense not being able to stop someone can get to you mentally. Could be one reason why, after a while, that defense kind of loses its spark, its energy. But that's what Jesse Minter has been brought in to do. Get the best out of these players, Derwin James especially, because personally I really like Derwin James. I was a big fan of him coming out of Florida State. And if they could unlock him, I know they have other questions elsewhere with Khalil Mack. Is he going to get traded or released? They got to figure out their cap space with four of their best players, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joey Bosa, and Mack, as I mentioned. But if you're able to keep Derwin James, I think Derwin James does enough for this defense that it might not be a top 5, top 10 defense right away. It might take a season even, but having Derwin James be the catalyst of it all, a sort of, just Ed Reed-ish kind of leader. I'm not saying he's Ed Reed as of now, but having that kind of voice back there, a quarterback of the defense, if you will, back there, controlling everything, will not only make this defense look a lot better and a lot more organized, but it'll make the job easier for Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter, who are both new to this Chargers team, back into the NFL. And it'll definitely take some time, but I like the fact that, Jesse Minter came out and pointed out to some players that he expects a lot more out of, and he is trying to get the best out of them because he expects it to lead to a lot of success. Is Derwin James the right piece to build around? I would say so, just to allude back to what I was saying. Building around the safety, and I think a good linebacker makes it a lot easier because they're able to organize everything and make sure the coverages on the back end are tight. Everyone's where they're supposed to be, as opposed to having one really good defensive lineman, a D end, a rusher of some sorts. It makes it easier just because you could have the quarterback hold the ball longer, and it makes the defensive end's jobs a little bit easier if on the back end it's all organized and it's all well put together, as opposed to, as a pass rusher, getting there very quick, but the coverage isn't well. Someone's not where they're supposed to be. There's a lot of miscommunications, and then you get a lot of big plays, and the pass rushers in turn get frustrated because they're getting there quick, but they're not getting anywhere near the quarterback. And that's why I think having a guy like Derwin James, who not only is really a deep safety, he can play in the box, almost like a dime linebacker, or in any coverage they want to line him up in. He has so much versatility that you could really explore what you want to do with him, but finding that one area where he really excels in, I think is what Jesse Minter is trying to do in his time already getting to know Derwin James, but more so going into training camp and preseason, and then even during the season, because this is definitely going to take some time. Just in terms of the defense overall, I think they're going to really try and hone in on the defensive side of the ball, because offensively, they don't really need too much. With the running back market of how it is, yeah, you lost Austin Eckler, but you could re-sign him if both parties are up for that. But in the same breath, you could get another running back probably for the same amount of money and potentially cheaper. They could go for Saquon, but I think he's going to be too expensive for them with their cap. Derrick Henry, potentially, for a year or two. He could give you more production just because he's been more relevant, at least last season, than Austin Eckler. But even, I don't know, a Tony Pollard or DeAndre Swift could be interesting as well because he had a good season with the Eagles, but they obviously didn't re-sign him, and now he's going to be a free agent. I think that would be a good fit for the Chargers as well because he could catch the ball. He's very agile, like Austin Eckler, but he's a bit more nimble and a bit more versatile in the passing game compared to Austin Eckler. And just to wrap it all up, I think this defense is definitely going to take some work, but seeing what Jim Harbaugh did at Michigan, the kind of defense that they had, building up from the D-line and then so forth, the linebackers and the safety, he might have to work a little bit backwards here with Derwin James being the focal point, but you still have Joey Bosa there, and even if you don't have Khalil Mack, you could still draft somebody or find other free agents out there that could generate you a pass rush. Your defensive tackle position hasn't been the best. They could go and try and negotiate something for Christian Wilkins or a player like that, but I think they have the pieces there, and I think Jim Harbaugh is excited to work with them, and because it's defensively built, or he's defensive-minded, more so than offense, I think it would be a good point for him to start with this defense, because if he could get the defense right, he already has the franchise quarterback, Keenan Allen, and just a decent enough offense to work with where you don't have to be putting up 25 points per game to improve from what you did last year. I think that's the main goal, just improving on last year. It's not going to be that hard, I don't think, because I think they were 4-13 if my memory serves me right. So if he could get more out of Justin Herbert, make this defense look better, I think everyone is going to fall in love more with Jim Harbaugh than they already are excited for him as soon as you walk back in through that door. But we're going to leave it at that. The comments were interesting from Jesse Minter to point out the players, and I'm very fascinated to see where he takes this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to move on with the show. We're going to go into a quick break right now, but on the other side of that break, don't go anywhere because the story on Dak Prescott and how he feels attacked by the recent comments on the Cowboys culture is coming up towards the end of the show, as well as where the Bills stand and what are all the trade rumors about Stefon Diggs about? Are there any truth to them? And how some news that actually broke today could influence that trade potentially for Stefon Diggs. All that and more coming up on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.